It's go time.
Welcome to Quick Kicks here on Third Down Gamble with your hosts, Don Charbin and Heath Graham.
Welcome back to Third Down Gamble. Don Charbin here with Heath Graham. Heath, it's been a while since you and I have sat down and had a chat about anything. Further developments with Zach Collaros, of course, is making the headlines still. But if we want to look at the preseason that is and training camps, the Ottawa Redblacks lose Nick Martiner for the entire season. And we were talking prior that receiving core looked like it finally found everything it wanted. And all of a sudden now one of the two cogs that they thought would fill that Canadian role is gone.
That is a huge loss for the Red Blacks. We had talked a lot about the potential for that receiving core this year. So to have somebody go down for the season this early in camp is a tough one. We've seen this over the last few years. There have been significant injuries early on in training camps, especially leg, knee, Achilles tendon injuries have become more commonplace. So I know teams are focused this year on making sure that they have extra stretching breaks during these practices to try to alleviate some of those injuries. And let's hope this isn't the tip of the iceberg when it comes to these kind of camp injuries.
Well, Ryan Sevier is already out with the Rough Riders. He was pegged to be their starting center. So that brings back Noah Zur, who had been released and now is back in with the Rough Riders. It's one of those things when you get injuries in training camp, and it's not always because of competition. Sometimes it's just freak occurrences that people get hurt. It really does change your outlook. It's sad thing about football. It's you go into a game and you hope you come out unscathed. I don't think of many sports where you worry about that as much as you do football.
No, that's for sure. And we talk about the Saskatchewan Roughriders loss on the offensive line. This was a line that saw 13 different players start last season. They let Godber go, who was their starter last year, and thought they had a great upgrade. And now to see that starting center go down is a tough way to start. We know the Riders have been through this before. I have no doubt that they can get through it again, but they need to make sure some of these guys stay healthy. Jamarcus Hardrick is back from missing almost the entire season last year as well. So they've got some pieces there. They just need to keep them bandaged up and ready to go.
And Dalton Schoen has finally reappeared at Winnipeg camp after the injury that he had to overcome in the offseason. You've got those types of stories that are on the good side of the equation where they're coming back. They're making it back onto the field. That's important too. It gives you more depth for the Blue Bombers at receiver. They've kind of were decimated this offseason. They're picked up a couple of Stampeders to help fill the roles, but beyond that, they are still going to be a question mark when it comes to receiver.
They are. Drew Wolotarski moved on to Hamilton. Kenny Lawler moved on. Ontario Wilson is getting an opportunity south of the border as well. So that's three big receivers that they lost. Getting Dalton Schoen back and healthy is key to that Bomber's success. He's had a couple of pretty severe leg injuries, so hopefully he's taken the time to recoup and get his strength back and recover fully from those.
That's what you hope. Anytime that a player goes down, you do want A, the best for them in terms of a healthy recovery, and B, that they can get back into the playing shape that they were prior to the injury, so that it's almost like a plug and play where you can bring them back in. They know the system. You can go forward with it. It's really important for the Blue Bombers, though. They've got the extra time to start the season. It was interesting when I saw the press conference with Mike O'Shea when that question was asked, what does that extra week do for you? And he wasn't sure himself. He said, in some years it means something, in some years it doesn't. I don't know.
Well, I think it boils down to the players are eager to get started, right? And that's one of the downsides to having an odd number of teams in the league is somebody sits out. And you go through this camp, you have your preseason games, you trim your roster, you get everybody ready to go, and then you're sitting on the sidelines for a week watching everybody else kick off their season. So I can understand where he's coming from. It does give you that little bit extra time in especially for the new players, to run through the playbook before you get completely into meaningful games. But at the same time, players want to play.
And they're going to have to do it without Zach Collaros to start the season. The punishment, if you want to call it that, for not responding to a couple of phone calls, a couple of texts, and other ways of communication that were available and being used at the time was to be 2 games. That's the natural form of things, but it's been dropped down to 1. Now, the CFLPA is all over this. I'm not sure why, because off-season testing is still a significant thing that has to happen. And what is the CFLPA up in arms about? I don't get.
Their job is to look out for the best interest of their players. So that's where they're coming from. Sometimes in any walk of life, you question some of the wording from unions because they have to protect players at all cost or protect employees at all cost. Thank you to you and Andrew for carrying the torch on this one. The Bomber fan misses 1 week. The quarterback gets suspended. Now I have to jump in a week later. I think this was handled pretty well, all things considered. We know failed drug tests or refusals generally result in a 2-game suspension. Obviously, the league saw some holes in the way that they were doing this as well, which is why it was reduced to 1. All in all, I think this is a fair judgment. It's unfortunate to lose your starting quarterback for game 1 of the season because you really want to hit the ground running. All things considered, they cut that suspension in half from what it could have been. Now the league is looking at how to handle this better so you don't have these failures of communication.
AC Leonard, I think, was the most recent case that we can think of where after a game he refused to provide a sample and he got a 2-game suspension. Now, this was something completely different for Zach Collaros. In the same breath, when you do not provide when they request, there is a punishment, because the assumption is from the anti-doping agencies that what's going on here? What's really going on here? And not that Zach Collaros or AC Leonard did anything wrong in terms of what they had ingested. It just comes down to, if you're asked, you do it. This is part of your requisite duty as part of a football team, a soccer team, a baseball team. It doesn't matter. And if you're contracted, that is a 12-month-a-year thing.
It is. And what the league has recognized is what we have here is a failure to communicate. They rely on the testing agency to be the one reaching out to the player. They've recognized, I believe, that moving forward, especially in the off season, they should maybe have some team or agent involvement in contacting the player as well. So if there is a failure to reach the player, they will now reach out to the team and or the player's agent, let them know they're trying to contact the player and help navigate, which I think is fair and reasonable as well. The team should be informed on what is happening with their player. It shouldn't be an afterthought. So I think this is the right way to move forward to hopefully prevent these kind of things going on in the future. Like I said, though, there was a rule infraction. It's like if I got a speeding ticket in a school zone today, and by Friday that's no longer a school zone, I was still speeding when it was a school zone. So a similar thing, the rule was broken. They recognize the error and are moving forward to make it better.
And I don't put this on the CFL. I don't know why the CFL even has to take the hit. This is part of the CFLPA's jurisdiction. This is their player. This is their member that they have to protect and or inform. And my question to you, why don't you, when you sign a contract or sign in with the CFLPA, get a little welcome package and it has all of these numbers so that you add them to your phone right then and there? So there's no illusion about being spam, no illusion about what could be happening next. I'm not trying to chide Zach Collaros. It may feel like I am, but it's not that. I understand his concern over the situation, and he got the suspension reduced by a game because of the confusion. But I put this back on the CFLPA. This is your problem, not the league's problem, because doping isn't a league thing. This is a sport thing.
That's fair to point the finger at the Players Association as well, because at the end of the day, it is up to them to make sure that their membership is strong, that their membership is following all the rules and regulations, and that they can support those members. This was obviously a gaping hole in how that was handled. And who knows how many different phone numbers, where this call came from, how it was listed. Those are all questions that we don't fully have the answers to, but there needs to be ownership by the Players Association that this was a failure on their part.
If you're not using your phone, which is great, if you want to undial yourself and get away from it and go out and do other things, but then you have to have a methodology to be contacted. The CFLPA, when you sign on, you've got to have that in your get to know the CFL and get to know drug testing kit.
And this falls back to where the change in those communication channels are going to come. I fully believe that if he got a call or text from Mike O'Shea during the offseason, Zach Collaros is probably going to answer that. If he got a call from Kyle Walters, he's probably going to answer that. But the fact that the testing agency didn't reach out through the teams prior to this, but will now moving forward, there's holes in this all over the place. But at the end of the day, it's a 1-game suspension. That's what we're living with. And I think that gives Zach one more week to prepare than the rest of his team. And he should be raring to go by the time he finally steps on the field during the regular season.
And just to be clear, the CFL does not run the testing. CFL has nothing to do with it on that level. That is something that's done for all athletes, whether you're an Olympic athlete or a professional athlete. That is through their agencies. Make sure that all of this is done above board for all the leagues.
Hi, I'm Dave Naylor, and you're listening to the Third Down Gamble podcast.
The CFL has made some tweaks and adjustments to several rules this offseason. Most notable is player safety, protecting the quarterbacks, protecting vulnerable receivers. Let's take a little walk through the changes that they have made.
First one is probably the one that I think on any play raises the most concern, and that is a grade 2 roughing the passer penalty. That hadn't really been pushed too hard in the past. There was sometimes questions as to whether or not hit was too late, too high, or too violent. But now there is more modification in terms of interpretation, and that is going to help with the on-field officials make that call. And a grade 2 roughing the passer is a 25-yard and you're gone. That is it. The player that committed the foul is out of the game. So the terminology is a blow delivered with the crown of the helmet to the head or neck of the passer, despite having a clear view to contact, and there are no mitigating circumstances. So basically, if you're not being pushed at the same time, if you haven't been tripped at that moment, those are the types of things that will be mitigating. The other thing is a blow is delivered to the knee or below of the passer, despite having clear view. And again, this is all about clear view. If you have an opportunity to see what's happening and you persist, that's when you get in trouble. And the last one is an egregiously late hit, which rarely happens. But if it ever does, again, you've got clear opportunity to avoid.
And I think we need to clarify here as well that even if there is incidental contact that causes a defensive player to hit the quarterback, it's not a scot-free no penalty. That will still result in a 15-yard roughing the passer penalty. So we saw some instances, especially last season with Miles Brown, had a unfortunate string of luck in hitting and injuring quarterbacks. Neither of those, I believe, would have resulted in a grade 2 roughing the passer penalty. There was circumstances of contact creating those hits. They would have still been flagged correctly as a 15-yard roughing the passer. These are the opportunities to hit the quarterback where you've got a clear shot at him, you're lowering your head and really delivering a vicious and dangerous hit that will result in 25 yards. And as you mentioned, an automatic ejection from the game. I like the way they've gone about this. I think it will do a good job in really painting that picture of what you can and can't do when it comes to contacting the quarterback.
Miles Brown, the hit on Chris Strevler, you're saying that was a low-grade 15-yard penalty? I'm kind of thinking that was 25. Given especially what happened to Strevler on the play, could Miles Brown have avoided it? That's the question, I guess, in everyone's mind. He was coming low, but was he being pushed or was he being tripped?
It's funny, we're kind of on opposite sides of the coin based on the teams we cheer for in this one. It's kind of funny that we are looking out for the betterment of the CFL as a whole, and we're not biased towards the teams that we necessarily support. And that one was interesting. There was definitely contact with the offensive lineman as well. You can argue one way or the other. I mean, had this rule been in place and he got a 25 and game, I probably wouldn't have fought it at that time either. However, reading through these rules, a 15-yard might be the sufficient call there as well. One other one to maybe talk about was Reddick Cramdy's hit last year on Drew Brown, where it wasn't a contact with the helmet, the crown of the helmet, but the way that hit was delivered could have constituted a grade 2 roughing the passer as well.
Niles Morgan on Taylor Powell in September. What about that? There are obviously instances where these things happen. Again, it's not very often. In fact, if you look at the stats from the CFL, concussions have dropped. So rule changes like this are working. They're getting players more aware of what you can and cannot do, and respect the fact that this guy's trying to earn a paycheck as well. Automatic ejections will be expanded as well in terms of all low blocks on kicking plays, which is great, and punching actions, which haven't always brought about a major foul, but now open or closed hand to the head area, you are gone.
I am probably more pleased with the rule augmentations this offseason than I have been in any previous offseason. I think the CFL really hit this out of the park. I know we talked a lot about those quarterback injuries last season. We're not surprised to see these changes in place. We talked about the necessity of protecting the star players. Low blocks, we've already talked about leg and knee injuries to start this episode. Those kinds of illegal blocks can cause permanent career-ending damage to a player's legs. And the punching action, we've seen different interpretations of that, so I'm happy to see it more laid out in black and white. Any open or closed hand punching action to the head area, and you're gone. I applaud these changes.
Low hits on vulnerable receivers. That's another one that's going to draw a 15-yarder. Again, that's if the receiver doesn't jump. But basically, you can't have a moment to protect yourself. You're very vulnerable. You have to have some protections from the rules. Ineligible receivers. This is an interesting one. Or once an eligible receiver touches a ball, all players become eligible. In the past, if there was a deflected ball, even as an offensive lineman, you weren't really allowed to catch the football. This changes that to give them the opportunity to hang on to it.
Love it. It's going to create some more activity at the line. Not that you anticipate offensive linemen making athletic receptions game in and game out, but it does allow them to, at least to make that play on the ball. We see it's instinct. You see a tip ball, their instinct is to try to catch it. And in the past, they've been ineligible and been flagged for that infraction. I'm happy to see this as well. It will create some excitement when those tip balls are up. The way it's worded, though, you have to remember that an eligible player has to touch the ball first before an offensive lineman. Something to watch for, but again, I believe this is a very positive change.
And the other one that maybe we won't even see, but it will still matter in some context. An offside pass is defined as a ball being directed in any manner other than being kicked towards the opponent's goal line. The team making the offside pass is not permitted to advance the ball or retain possession beyond the originating point of the pass. But the change is what will be considered as an offside pass. And this is if a defender prevents the ball from going out of bounds and knocks it or bats it back into the playing area in an offside direction. In other words, forward. Batting a loose ball in any direction following a fumble, a block kick, wild snap, a lateral pass, or kick ball. This, you can go back to Charleston Hughes, and I believe against the Toronto Argonauts in Regina, where the ball was on the ground. He tapped it with his hand to get it away from another player, picked it up, scored a touchdown. They said that was illegal. That type of thing is going to be allowed now, and that's where the ball is free on the ground, and you tap it forward to try to gain possession yourself, or at least move it away from the defender who's right there. You cannot block that defender, but you can tap the ball now.
Again, it's just a way to make it a little bit easier to interpret these rules. I read some comments on social media about, well, what's to stop a player from batting at 20 yards forward to another player downfield? And the answer is the 12 defenders on the field, because any ball on the ground in these situations is a live ball. So it would take a lot of skill to intentionally bat the ball that forward to another player. I don't anticipate this is something that is going to be practiced a lot. They may have some loose ball drills just to try to get everybody used to the idea, but I don't see it as a strategic move to get the ball forward. It just allows you to make a play on a live ball in a few more directions, I guess, if you will.
The other thing that's going to happen, and this one's really great, and it's something that you and I had championed on this podcast several times. It hasn't gone to full manifestation, but it is getting closer. The restriction when applying the maximum distance on major penalties, misconducts, and rough play disqualifications will be removed. In other words, if you're at the 10-yard line and you're going towards the goal line and the other team, the defense, takes a rough play call, that ball isn't going to the 5 anymore, which was half the distance. It's going right to the 1. Same thing, you're coming out. You're at the 14-yard line. You take a rough play penalty going away from your goal. That ball is going to be hauled back to the 1-yard line. That is great because it creates peril.
We've been lobbying this for probably 3 or 4 years now at this point. I think the half the distance is one of the dumbest penalties, one of the dumbest rules in Canadian football. If it's a 20-yard penalty at the 55, it should be a 20-yard penalty from the 25, from the 20. We're not 100% there yet, but we're getting better. It does penalize that team pretty much the full yardage. If the distance of the penalty would have got the team into the end zone, it now puts them on the 1-yard line. Nothing but positive to say about this one. And I think if we eliminate all half the distance penalties, I will be a happy man.
And consider this too. A person's got a little bit of a grudge over something that's happened. The ball's at the 10-yard line. Well, if I cheap shot this guy, they get a first down, but they're stuck at the 5. Now it's down to the 1. That's different. That really changes what the coaches are going to see on the field if somebody does that. Because before you'd get a chewing out, but it was only a couple yards you gave up. Now you do that same thing at that same spot. Whoop, you're going to the 1-yard line. That makes a huge difference in terms of what you do next.
It is. Like I said, I believe that the severity of the penalty, people will argue that it puts teams in an unfair disadvantage getting the ball now to the 1-yard line. But as I said earlier, it's the amount of yards you're moving, regardless of where it is on the field. They can't move it right into the end zone and say it's a touchdown. The closest they can do is move that ball to the 1. You've done the crime. Now it's up to your team to make that defensive stop. You've got 3 downs to stop them. If you do, momentum goes back the other way. But if you have caused that face mask penalty, that roughing the passer, whatever the case is, now there are severe consequences for it.
One of the things that did not get discussed and may not be discussed in 2026 when they sort of last look at this set of ideas that they want to check into is the single point. And one of the things that I fully believe that the single point is one of the main reasons why we have so few ties in the CFL. Because if you look at the NFL, how many ways can you score in the NFL? You've got a 2-pointer from a safety or a 2-point convert, a 3 and a 6. That's it. In the CFL, you add that single point. And last year, what did we have? 2 games that went into overtime? We had at least 2 games that finished on a punt single or a missed field goal, which technically was a punt single at the end of a game. It changes the scoring patterns and it allows for more results within the 60.
We've done some deep dives on the rouge in the past. I like the rules the way they are, and I wouldn't change them. The one I could potentially live with would be the ball, especially on a punt, having to land in the field of play or give the defending team an opportunity to make a play on the ball.
Why?
I'm not in favor of it. I'm just saying I could live with it. I don't want to see that change made, but at least it gives the opportunity for the defense to make a play.
Why?
to stop that score. And I know you're going to say they could also block the punt to prevent the score. And you're 100% correct. That's the way they could go, but at least it has a little bit more skill involved. Again, don't want to see it. That's the only exception that I would be able to swallow.
I don't care for it at all. There's no way that this makes any sense. And I'll tell you why. Why do you have to give, or why do you have to offer up the team that's going to be scored upon an extra chance? Oh, if they put it too far, then they don't get a point. Like, why are you giving them any favors? That's their problem that ball is close enough that they could punt it through the end zone. Leave it alone. If you're in a spot where that single is a risk, that's on you, not on the rules.
Like we talked about before, it's the spot on the field. You've given up the yardage. That's a scoring play. The other one that didn't come up, which I'm glad, was the onside punt or dribble punt, where a player could kick the ball forward from behind the line of scrimmage, and any gain of yardage, as long as they regain possession of the ball, was an automatic first down. They haven't had a look at that one. I'm sure they've had a look. I'm sure they've had discussions. At this point, they have not made any changes to that rule either.
When you've got the commissioner coming out in favor of those elements being in the football game, the dribbled punt to get the first down, or the pooch punt, if you want to call it that, the single point on the myriad of ways you can score it, it's pretty tough as a rules committee to go, yeah, we're not going to do that. We're going to go our own way. When the commissioner has come out and said, Stuart Johnson has said, this is what I want to see because that's what makes the Canadian game distinct. And one of the things that I think he's really got on target with in his thinking is he wants to keep this game unique.
He does, and those are certainly things that make the game unique. It does harken back to the rugby rules. There's a lot more action that can happen with kicking in the CFL than there is with the NFL. And that's one of the parts of the game that adds a lot of excitement, makes our game different. And I know there's people, every time one of these things happens, that get all up in arms about it. You look at the number of times these happen. As you said, there was 2 games last year that were decided on last minute rouges. There's been less than 5 successful dribble punts for first downs in league history. So I don't think it's something that needs drastic changes. I think it should be embraced, celebrated when it does happen, and it adds a lot of fun for the viewers, and I'm sure the players as well.
Now, a little bit of trivia for our listening audience. You ever wondered why it's called the rouge? Well, back in the day, if the ball was punted into the end zone and not returned, they would throw a red flag out to signify a single point. That red flag was also known as rouge in French, and that's where the name came from.
Third down.
We've had one preseason game so far. The BC Lions and the Calgary Stampeders met in Victoria. I'm so happy that there's a CFL Plus. I get to airplay it from my phone onto my big screen TV. Beautiful 4K picture. I really commend them for the coverage. There was a little bit of glitch with the audio, but that tends to be the case when you're trying to patch a radio broadcast with a TV feed. There's always that little error that they have to get past. But once things got going, they did a fantastic job. I enjoyed watching it. Hey, football in May.
We'll take it. And I think this was a great move and a reasonable solution by both TSN and the CFL. TSN is going to broadcast 2 preseason games. The remaining 7 are all going to be available on CFL Plus. So that's going to give everybody the opportunity to see the games. TSN, as the rights holders, could have said no. They have agreed to let this happen. It's going to get more eyes on the games during the preseason, which will hopefully translate to more eyes on the games during the regular season. So a great move by all parties involved and a wonderful solution.
It's so easy to do this as well. You go to cfl.ca, you go to the top line where it says where to watch, and one of the submenus is CFL Plus. You log in, it's free. And when the game starts, get the game going and away you go. And as I said, I did it on my phone. I airplayed it to my TV. Fantastic. So easy to do. The Stampeders win in British Columbia. Nathan Rourke gets out there for long enough to maybe cool his coffee, but after that, he is gone. They're not risking him in this context. For the Stampeders, a little bit of positive coming back from Victoria that, the W is in the books, and they got some good looks at their quarterbacks.
They did. We did not see Vernon Adams Jr. on the field. Not surprisingly, the traveling team often leaves their number one quarterback at home. We got to look at PJ Walker. He took the bulk of the snaps for the Stampeders. He was 8 of 16 for 77 yards. Logan Bonner, who last time I saw him on a CFL field, struggled mightily with 5 interceptions, 5 turnovers in that game. A bit better this time around, 4 for 5. That other pass was for an interception, however, so he still has that turnover trend. Josh Love took 4 pass attempts, completed 3 of them for 26 yards as well. So a good showing all in all by the Stampeders quarterbacks. On the other side, as you mentioned, Nathan Rourke saw the field, went 1 for 1. Jeremiah Mazzoli 3 for 5, and Chase Bryce, who we saw in some mop-up game action last season, 14 of 20 for 135 yards and a touchdown.
Between the 3 quarterbacks for Calgary, they threw the ball 25 times. It's not often that you see that low a number in any game, but they really relied on their running game. Maybe Dave Dickinson was looking at establishing more of that. One thing that running the football does, it's a time suck. You get the fewer plays in a football game. The other thing that you can do is wear down a defensive line. And if you can control the line of scrimmage like that, then you're going to be further ahead overall. We look at what Winnipeg's done with Brady Oliveira, and before that, Andrew Harris. How many times did they just turn around, hand the ball to him, and say, take care of business for us?
The Stampeders running backs looking to fill that spot behind Dedrick Mills. Benjamin, 8 carries for 34 yards. Tyon Evans, 11 for 44. And Ludovic Chiquette, 6 carries for 47. So looks like there are some capable backs in that Calgary system, and we'll see what develops for a running game for them come regular season.
Quincy Vaughn, the Stampeders pick in the recent CFL draft, who was drafted as a tight end but listed when he signed as a quarterback. Well, he went in and did what he did in college, took the ball from behind center and pushed in for a touchdown. He's going to be the Tommy Stevens replacement in those situations.
And it sounds like in college, at least, he was very successful in that role. So we'll see if that translates to the pro game. A good start. He had the 1 carry and got it across the goal line.
Now, if you're the BC Lions, do you read anything into this result? The Lions took a lot of personal fouls. They took a couple of big pass interference calls against them. But is that just growing pains under a new head coach?
I think it is. I wouldn't be too worried in game 1 of preseason. Again, you've got people trying to fit into these rosters, trying to find their way. It can be a little bit disorganized, especially a new scheme, as you mentioned, a new head coach. There's a lot to work on there. On the offensive side of the ball, it's great to see Jeremiah Mazzoli back as well. I think this BC Lions quarterback room with Rourke, Mazzoli, and Chase Bryce is one of the best top to bottom 1 through 3 quarterbacks in the league. So they've got to be feeling good about that. And now just have to work on cleaning up a little bit of that sloppy play.
Sticking with the BC Lions, Amar Duman has brought in Snoop Dogg to be the pregame show prior to their first game against the Edmonton Elks. Within 2 hours, 40,000 tickets were sold, and they are approaching 50,000. What a brilliant idea.
They have taken this. This is the 4th year now of these kickoff concert series events in BC, and they've gone One Republic, LL Cool J, 50 Cent, and Snoop Dogg. These are getting bigger and more exciting every year, and it has done its job in launching the season for the BC Lions. It's going to fill that stadium every little bit. If that converts an extra 1,000 fans per game over the course of the season, that's a success. I know they're hoping for larger numbers than that. This is a great way to kick off the season in BC.
Well, it's a huge bump on the revenue side. I don't know what Snoop Dogg costs to bring in for a show. It's going to be a chunk of change. But even with that, I'm sure that the Lions are going to be covering that and more. And you're right, getting more people involved, getting a different audience involved with the BC Lions is a great thing to do. The other piece that he is doing so well is he gets the name BC Lions put out there, because people are talking about Snoop Dogg. He's going to be with the BC Lions on Saturday, June 7th. Are you going to be there? That's creating buzz. And the one from day one, Amar Damon has created buzz about the BC Lions.
From my small sample size, the concert series is working. I reached out to a friend in Vancouver, a big NFL fan, not the biggest CFL fan. As soon as the announcement of Snoop Dogg came out, I sent him a message saying, "Are you going to this one?" And he's still kicking himself for missing 50 Cent last year. He is one of those 40,000 that scooped up a ticket right away. He's excited about it. That's exactly the target market. That's getting people involved. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go to a handful of games this year.
Any way you can bring people into the stadium and experience the game gets more power to you. And Amar Damon is literally blazing trails and teaching these other guys. Remember, Randy Ambrosi talked about best practices. Well, here you have a best practice.
Third Down Gamble uses the expert resources of the Canadian Football League and 3 Down Nation. For up-to-date, insightful statistics and analysis, please visit cfl.ca and 3downnation.com. The CFL on CBC theme music is used with written permission from the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation.
Thank you for listening to our show. Third Down Gamble is hosted on Podbean. Follow us on Twitter, where our handle is @ThirdDownGamble. Join us again next time. The Third Down Gamble podcast. Audio worth watching.